Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. And today we are taking a time machine. We're going back to the 1980s, to the era of my childhood. And we are talking about the best television shows from the 1980s. It's going to be really fun. And I am film critic Rachel Wagner, and Terry's here.
Hey,
How's it going?
it's good. We are so middle-aged. Um, that's what I got from this list. We are so middle-aged.
Yeah. And this would be a very different list for the Gen Xers, the people just older than us, because they were at a different, like, for me, obviously my list skews young to a lot of shows
Well,
for kids and things like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I technically fall in the last year of Gen X when I was born, so I do not include myself as a millennial.
I am the first year of millennials. It
Yeah,
starts in 81.
I'm the last year of Gen X, so it kind of, you know, I can claim both actually.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I actually don't even care. Like people get so upset when they're throwing out boomers and millennials. I was like, who cares?
Yeah.
Each generation hates the previous generation.
Yeah, it's true.
You get to a certain age and you hate what came before you.
Yeah.
It's the way of life.
Yeah. We all think we're all lame, and we probably all are.
Yep, absolutely. It's true.
or,
It's just it is the passage of life. It's okay.
but I think especially during the 80s, there was television was just a different
Wow, it
game.
is.
It was
Yeah.
like if people were talking about, oh, it was made for television, it usually did not have like the gravitas of what you have now. Like most television shows made now are like as good as what you would see in the theater, which was just not the
Yeah,
case.
no.
It is a
No, well,
different experience.
for a majority of shows, there were some shows that slipped in
Hmm.
and slipped out, but like I almost miss the old style TV because you didn't have to invest a lot,
Yes.
it was more escapism. Some shows you did have to invest, but I mean the 80s, I've got one actually that counts as full-blown primetime soap opera, and those
Hmm.
were, you eat them with a spoon up. That's what I love. But yeah, I also miss like the 20 plus episodes. It's weird to say
I do
because that's
too.
a lot of time to devote, but just, we don't do anything anymore like on a weekly basis. Everything's a
Yeah.
binge model, or you can wait to binge it if you're lucky if it ends up streaming.
Yeah, and I miss the sitcom, just being able to just unwind and relax and
Oh
not
yeah,
have to
like a
learn
mindless,
anything.
there's a lot of, it's
Because
so
even I
true.
I think that like something like Abbott Elementary is brilliant and super well done, but like it's pretty heavy too. It's like,
Yeah.
and I guess some of these sitcoms from the 80s could also be heavy. They'd have their moments, but I don't know, there's just something so
Well,
relaxing
Wait,
about these
if you
shows.
were, if you remember, they always had those special episodes in the comedy
Yeah,
shows.
it's
Like,
true.
oh my God, in Different Strokes, the kid who got molested and kidnapped by the
Oh
child
my
molester.
gosh.
And remember Punky Brewster this is something I'll never forget. Punky Brewster being, stuck in the refrigerator outside. There was a time,
Yeah,
people won't understand. There was a
it was
time in the
intense.
80s, it was a real panic of
Hmm.
kids being stuck in refrigerators that were left outside. And growing up, I was like, where are all these refrigerators that people keep panicking about that we're supposed to be stuck in outside? But there were. I do remember people would because throw out their refrigerators in the corner. It was a real panic. Like people always roll their eyes. I was like, the 80s was something else. I don't think we're ever
They
gonna
really were.
replicate it again. But yeah, we had a panic. Stranger danger started to really amp at that time. So we had to worry
Oh, it's
about that.
true.
We had to be worried about these rogue refrigerators people were leaving outside. A whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, it's
But
true.
I do remember, or like Mr. Belvedere, if you remember
Oh
that
yeah,
show,
Mr.
with the whole
Belvedere.
I have AIDS, the little boy. And I was like, where is
Oh
this
my.
coming from? The sitcoms back in the day would take a moment to try to educate you on
It's
social
true.
issues. And you look back at it now and it's kind of cringy, but it was important at the time where people got
Hmm.
educated like that.
Yeah.
They tried to educate you on social issues, racial issues, whatever like that.
Yeah. Well, and a
But,
lot of these shows for me, I actually discovered later because
oh yeah, same.
my parents are not media people, TV people, and so we just didn't watch very many television shows or movies. A lot of times we didn't even have TV.
Hmm.
We would we would get it for the Olympics because I would beg and beg
Right.
because it used to be that the Olympics were well, they're still every 4 years, but both of them were
Yeah.
the same 4 years. And so I think it was until like 92 or something like that.
I
And
believe
so
so.
the 4 years would come up and I'd be like, please, please, can we get it for the Olympics? Please, can we get TV? And my mom would be like, okay. And then we would watch it too much and she'd be like, I'm getting rid of it. I hate it.
The same for me. We didn't watch a lot of TV. Like we would have, I remember it wasn't often, but sometimes we would watch like movies together. They would always
Mm-hmm.
like if my dad, it would be westerns. That's why I love westerns and John Wayne. I inherited that
Mm-hmm.
from my dad, and my
Yeah.
mom is musicals. But there were a few TV shows we'd watch together, like Little House on the Prairie. But when we did it, we came to a certain age where my parents gave, because my sister and I shared a room, we got a TV for Christmas. And back then, TVs were large pieces of furniture. And so we were so
Yeah, it's
excited. We were
true.
like, yay, we got TV. We would sneak and watch the Arsenio Hall show in the middle of the night. It was hysterical. But they entrusted us with that. And we were not allowed to go outside a lot. Um, no, we could go outside, but we couldn't leave our, our front porch. And so we had the house radius. It was kind of strict on where we could go.
Uh-huh.
So sometimes
Yeah.
the TV was what we had, not always, but
Ho, ho, ho. We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast, especially at Christmas?
Do you enjoy the holiday previews, recaps, interviews, and bonus episodes?
If the answer is yes, please consider supporting the Hallmarkies Patreon. We need your help to do what we do both during the Christmas season and all year round.
But not only do you help a podcast led by strong, independent women by becoming a Patreon, you get to become a part of the Hallmarkies family.
Starting at only $2 a month as a patron, you will have access to our Facebook Patreon group where we talk about the movies, shows, and more all year.
We also have many monthly patron watch alongs with guests like Lacey Chabert, Natalie Hall, Paul Campbell, Mary Lou Henner, and more, giving their behind the scenes details of their films.
As a patron, you also have the chance to provide input into the podcast and even join us at different tiers.
So this Christmas season, spread some cheer to the Hallmarkies Patreon and become a member today. You won't regret it.
Go to patreon.com/hallmarkies to learn more.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies. So it was a little bit tricky because we didn't include shows that ended early 80s, like Little
mhm,
House on the Prairie, which would have been definitely on my list, or also Eight is Enough
same.
is another one I thought of,
Yeah,
but that ended in 81, so it was more 70s show.
yeah. That
And
was a
then
difficult cut.
I didn't include anything that I did include in the 90s list. So
Right.
Roseanne, Simpsons, things like that.
Yeah. See, that was a hard cut for me because I was like, ooh, the Waltons and Little House on the Prairie, which, people who know me know I worship those shows. But the bulk of their run was in the 70s, and I was like, oh, and Eight is Enough as well, which was something that I
Yeah,
loved.
I loved Eight
That
is
I actually
Enough.
watch with my family now that I'm remembering Eight is Enough. But, you know, that's why I didn't include any shows that started in 1989 as well. Like Family Matters started in 1989. I love that show, but the
Yeah.
bulk of its run was in the 90s, so I didn't really think it counted. So I
Yeah, like
tried to
Simpsons as
go,
well. It
yeah, so I
started
tried to
in
go like,
88.
yeah, the latest I would go was like 87 was the latest I would go because you still had a couple of years in the 80s.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
All right. Well, let's dive in. Let's talk about our honorable mentions
mhm.
first. What's some honorable mentions that you have?
Well, off the top of my head, Murder She Wrote, which went
Yeah.
on through the 80s and 90s, so it could have been both shows. TJ Hooker, um, the comedies like Growing Pains, Mr. Belvedere. and I can't remember the name of the show, but oh, she was a robot. Little maid girl was a
Oh,
robot.
yeah.
Can't
What
remember the
was
name of that
called?
show. Yeah, it just popped into my mind.
Small
So
Wonder.
Small Wonder, that was
Yeah,
it.
that's what it's
And
called.
Empty Nest. I didn't make my list, but I loved Empty Nest. It was a spin-off of the Golden Girls. It was their neighbors, the doctor neighbor. I loved Empty Nest. Like
Mhm.
I was an old soul as a child, and they were
Yeah.
like, "What are you watching Empty Nest for?" Obviously, I discovered it. It was still actually because it ended in the early 90s. It was still giving on television. Like it kind of like what happened when I discovered The Nanny. I started watching it in reruns because it would give after the Golden Girls, and I became obsessed with it. And they
Yeah.
were like, "Why is she 10, 11 years old watching Empty Nest?" I was like, "This show is amazing." So I was
You're
always
like, leave me
weird.
alone.
Yeah, I was weird. I was a weird child. I loved kitty stuff and cartoons and all, and I still do today. But I was so attached. I just wanted to watch old people.
Yeah.
And the older I get, the older I want to watch them. Like, you know what I mean? Like I've always been attracted to that.
Well, you can tell from my list that I have that musical theater kind of bug in me because a lot of mine are kind of a little bit more like theatrical
Oh, sure.
skits, this kind of a thing. So I would have Pee-wee's Playhouse as
Oh,
a
yeah.
honorable mention.
That's right.
It's so creative, so inventive, so funny, not afraid to actually be funny for little kids
Totally.
to just be weird. And so I appreciate that a lot. And Punky Brewster,
Yes.
you already mentioned
Yeah.
the fridge.
And
But
serial killer and all
yeah,
this, those special
trauma.
episodes are oh, the facts of life that just popped into my mind as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what do you have at number 10?
Well, number 10, I picked animation, something my sister and I loved, and my sister had the dolls, but that would be Gem.
Yeah.
And it ran for, I think, about 3 years. It was 1985 to 1988. I mean, I went on a deep dive, but Gem is amazing. It's a cartoon musical. It's on DVD, and you can watch it on Tubi. But basically, Jerica inherits sort of her music company after her father dies. And she discovers forgot what the synergy is sort of this machine that it transforms her sort of like a hologram into Gem, and she becomes the
Mhm.
leader of a very successful Gem. And they constantly battle the lesser version of them, which are called the holograms. Jerica has a boyfriend named Rio, who is the manager for Gem and the holograms. Rio dates both of these women, and somehow it's okay because Jerica is Gem. But that's even as a child, I was like, Jerica, Rio ain't good for you. He over there trying to mac on Gem just because you were the two same people. That don't make it okay. But I mean, this was totally 80s. The fashion was incredible. The snippets of songs were incredible. I mean, this was my childhood.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
have it on my list as well. And
Yeah,
don't,
it's
if people have seen the live action
oh no,
movie,
no,
that's
no.
trash. Don't
Trash.
don't watch
It
it.
doesn't
It's
even resemble
no.
Gem.
It's it's terrible. And so you should give the show an actual shot.
This
You got
show
the
is
Misfits
amazing.
and the great songs and yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and they like totally like the green hair, the punk aesthetic. I mean, it is
Mhm.
chef's kiss to what people were wearing in the 80s,
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
at least was fashionable in the fashion magazines. I
Yeah.
mean, and I can still sometimes out of nowhere a song will pop up that I remember
Mhm.
from Gem.
Yeah.
The theme song is iconic. That's what we don't have anymore, theme songs.
Yeah, that's true for a
Iconic
lot of
theme
these
song.
shows. You're absolutely
Yeah.
right.
So, I mean, if you love animation, if you love like this is chef's kiss. I don't care what anybody
Yeah.
says. This is like the golden standard for me.
Yeah, a lot of shows don't even have an introduction anymore because they
No,
gotta
I
get
miss
in those
those.
ads. Like even Survivor, they've gotten rid of the opening sequence. It's just kind of
Yeah. I mean,
sad.
sometimes like you get sometimes you get like a 2 minute theme song and Charles in Charge. Like who couldn't sing, the theme song for like Charles in Charge in your head
Yeah.
or Growing Pains or anything like
Hmm.
that. Like
Yeah.
or the theme song for
Golden
Gem, which is
Girls.
incredibly
Thank you for
catchy.
being a friend.
Yeah.
Well, my number 10 has a pretty catchy theme song. and it's as cheesy as it gets, but I gotta go with Full House.
Yeah.
Number 10.
Yeah.
Sweet. It's not really even that funny, but funny enough. It's got uh it it lays on the sentimentality, but the kids are cute. It's got that like charming 80s cheese that I
Totally.
like.
Yeah.
Nice messages. It's a comfort watch to watch Full House, especially now with Bob Saget having passed away.
And I haven't rewatched Full House in forever. I loved it, and then there was a part where I kind of outgrew it because it was
Yeah.
on for a long time, and then I
Yeah, it
hated
was.
it because everybody else loved it. And then I went back to going, no, I appreciate it, but it's been
Yeah.
so long since I watched an episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
Mhm.
the family sitcom, one of the quiz essential family
Mhm.
sitcoms. Yeah.
Everywhere you look,
Well,
everywhere.
yeah.
It's a
Catchy
hard.
again.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And part of TGIF Friday, which was huge
Yeah,
for ABC in the 80s and 90s,
true.
where all the family sitcoms would be on a Friday. They've never been able to reproduce it, but it was a thing.
Hmm. Yeah. So, what do you have at 9?
I have A Different World, which was a spin-off of The Cosby Show. And it was about in the first season it had Lisa Bonet, and she was Denise from The Cosby Show. And it also had Marissa Tomei, and it was just basically about her going to Hellman College, which historically
I
black
forgot it had a
college.
Marissa Tomei.
Yeah, only in the first season. And then after that Lisa Bonet left, and it kind of became into its groove of what it became. I loved A Different World. I mean, I am a Whitney and Dwayne stan forever. I mean, they were the best. But it's basically just a bunch of kids going to college kids and a little bit older trying to, make their way and going through absolute shenanigans and important issues that were coming up around that time, and love stories and what goes on, what I mean, the most endearing couple was Whitney and Dwayne, and they had so many ups and downs before they actually got together, and then they got together and broke up. But it starred Jasmine Guy, Sinbad, Lou Mayers, Jada Pickett Smith was in it for the last couple of years, a whole bunch of people, Kadeem
Yeah,
Harrison. So I mean, it was fun,
yeah.
as I just loved it. It was funny. They got into so many shenanigans, and
I really considered this for my list
yeah.
because I do love Whitley and Dwayne for
Oh
sure.
yeah, man. Yeah.
Iconic.
They
And
totally
I
are.
feel like you didn't really see these types of Black characters that
Yes.
often in the 80s. I mean, of course,
Very
there is
true.
the Cosby Show, which we'll talk about, but that was more of like a family show. And to have these young adult characters wasn't as common. So it was
Oh, yeah,
nice
it's
to
very true.
see.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, it was a good show. And I
Yeah.
recall, it's been a while since I saw it, but I recall it being pretty funny.
Yeah. It's actually it's incredibly funny. I've seen it like run through countless times because it was on reruns forever. And this would be like I'd come home from school and just unwind. And
Hmm.
I love my love for Jasmine Guy started with this show. I absolutely adore her. I believe you can watch this on Max. I think they have all 6 seasons
Oh yeah.
streaming on Max. Yeah.
Well, that's good. My next choice is an obscure one that maybe people don't remember, but I remember quite fondly. And it was part of Nickelodeon. They brought it over from Canada, and it's called "You Can't Do That on Television." And this was an improv sketch comedy show that was kind of based on Laugh-In. That the very in Monty Python, it has a huge, you can feel the Monty
Yeah.
Python influence for sure. Here, like the very like silly, funny skits. This was basically responsible for bringing the slime to the
Hmm.
Nickelodeon. This
Yep.
was very important in that way. And you watch like the skits, even I was just watching some last night
Yeah,
and
they still hold up.
laughing. They
Yeah.
really do still hold up, and they had some edge to it. And Alanis Morissette.
Alanis Morissette was on it earlier. I loved when they would pop out of the lockers to tell jokes. I thought that was hysterical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they I guess it aired on Nickelodeon until 1994. So that's when I would have watched it.
Oh, it ran on for years, yeah.
Yeah, because that would have been when I was a teenager, which is would have been like the perfect age for this show, that it was funny and weird and strange and you wanted to talk about it with your friends. And I think that that kind of humor, I feel like we don't really see that much for
not for kids,
for teens anymore, that it's all
everything is,
I feel
so watered down, I think.
Yeah, well, it's like it's all for either like way younger or way older, and we don't have that kind of carefully made programming for like 10 to 13, 14, that age. And that this was, and just really talented performers that would make you laugh and do these skits. So it's one that I have real fond memories of.
It made Nickelodeon. We were Nickelodeon stands at my house. I mean, it was Pinwheel, and you can't do that on television. If anybody Pinwheel, that was more for younger kids. But I'm just like, what I remember, and it, man, Nickelodeon had some great shows back in the day. Now that I'm thinking about it, and they continue to, even after I grew out of it, like that '90s run. But yes, and that's an excellent pick, Rachel.
This at one point was Nickelodeon's highest rated show.
Oh yeah, it was
very popular.
It was very popular. It's what really started the network, and it, So I wonder if it says beloved in Canada. It has to be.
I would hope so.
I mean, for people who remember it, it's kind of weird because Nickelodeon is now something. It's the same, but there's other shows now that a next generation remember more than we do. But I mean, it was like everything for us for a good.
Yeah, I feel like you don't really hear about new shows on Nickelodeon. You hear about things like iCarly and stuff like that, but even that's quite a bit past.
Yeah, I mean, they all had an era. Same thing for the Disney Channel. They all had an era of shows that everybody talked about, and now they still have shows, but nobody. It's not as
I never hear it talked about.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what is your number 8?
My number 8 is another cartoon, which is Voltron, Defender of the Universe.
Oh, that's a good one.
Which was
I hadn't thought of that one, but you're right.
Yeah, because it was that, or I was like, do I pick Lionheart, Lionel, the Lionheart? That's all right, Lionel. Anyway, I picked Voltron. I love this. Basically, they're in outer space. They're aliens. They look like humans. It's kind of like a Magna style, I guess, or no, not Magna style. Boy, I really screwed this up. Anime style of sorts, like early sort of anime style. But they're on a planet. They fight bad guys, the evil prince. There are like 5 heroes, and they each have like these robots that look like lions. And when you combine them, it becomes one giant robot. Basically, it's what inspired the Power Rangers. If you think about the Power Rangers, Voltron was a much more sophisticated version of that. So I kind of butchered that. Apologies, but I know that Netflix has done. There's been many different iterations throughout the years, and I know a couple of years ago Netflix had an iteration of Voltron on there, and then there was like spin-offs and all that stuff. But to me, the OG is the best.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one. I forgot about that, but
I'd watch it every morning before I'd go to school.
Yeah.
Which was, so I'd always miss, I had seen these episodes already, but like I would always miss the last 10 minutes because I had to leave at that point. I couldn't postpone it any longer or I'd be late. And I lived like 2 blocks away. So I was cutting it.
Yeah. I mean, and then Transformers was a good show too.
Yes. And G.I. Joe. Those are all honorable mentions.
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle.
My sister and I still just yell out like that to each other, like from G.I. Joe.
That was the motto of G.I. Joe. Now you
yeah.
know, and knowing is half the battle.
He-Man, She-Ra. Oh my God, they're all
Yeah.
popping up into my. Now that we're talking about, they're all popping up. Anyway.
Well, my next pick is maybe I don't know how well people know this show. It's the Black Adder is my next pick.
Yes.
This is another sort of skit comedy kind of very Monty Python-esque.
Yes,
It's
very much.
hilarious. Rowan Atkinson is the Blackadder, and they just do all these ridiculous skits, and it's so funny. And Hugh Laurie is in
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, he joins in the
Stephen Fry, you see him.
second season, I think. Yes. Oh,
Mhm.
Miranda Richardson, you name
Yeah.
it, as British comedy are in this.
And
Each season is a different era.
And my favorite of all is the Blackadder's Christmas Carol. Have you ever seen this?
Oh, yes, I have. Oh my. Oh, of course he would be like a prototype
it's
of
so
Ebenezer.
funny. So it's about this. It's in Blackadder's Christmas Carol. He is like the nicest man in England instead of Scrooge, and basically the whole thing is to everybody treats him so horrible that he stops believing in Christmas by the end. So it's like the reverse of Christmas Carol.
It is
which
so
is
funny.
funny.
Yes, because each season is like a member of his family and the horrible situations that he's put in.
Yeah, and Robbie Coltrane from Harry Potter. He's the spirit of Christmas, and it's just really funny.
It
and
really is funny.
It's just a great show. If you want to laugh your head off, then you should watch The Blackadder.
I have an image of when they're in the when he's working with think of when Hugh Laurie, I've just popped into my mind when he's the Prince Regent and he's climbing up the ladder yelling, "It's sausage time." Rachel is yes, hilarious. Check it out.
Yeah.
Hysterical.
It's one of the greats all time.
Totally.
It's such a funny show. And you watch Saturday Night Live now and you're just like, wow. Like it's just such a pale comparison to what it used to be, and to like people weren't afraid to make people laugh. And I know that sounds all Karen to me, but like but it is true that like we have gotten there was just something about the age of Trump, not to get political, that like people stopped wanting to be funny and people stopped trying to make jokes. And I don't know, like we just have not recovered as in many ways we have not recovered. And as far as comedy goes, we certainly haven't.
Yeah.
I
think we're too afraid to be edgy. I mean, there's a way to be edgy and to be okay as well. But don't take everything to heart. Sometimes it's a tough world to live in already.
Yeah, we need to laugh. We need to laugh. All right. What do you have next?
So my number 7. This is for me the standard of the primetime soap opera. It is Dynasty. It ran for 9 years, 1981 to 1989 on ABC. Yeah, it had a spinoff, The Colbys, which ran for 2 seasons. There was a reunion miniseries, a making of. I mean, chef's kiss to this. Basically, it's about a super rich family that lives in Colorado and the crazy stuff that happens to them. Like they're presumed dead, they get kidnapped, they're brainwashed, they're abducted by aliens, they're switched at birth, there's love triangles. Can't forget the doppelgangers, sometimes triplangers. I mean, you name it, it happened on the show. There was a contract dispute one time where people wanted more money, and the Muldoon massacre, where they massacred everybody, and they were like, "You fired," and then you only got to find out who came back the following season. I mean, I can't forget Adam. He was poisoned. They painted his walls with some kind of hallucinogenic drug, and he went crazy in his office. What you can think of happened on this show. It's great. It stars John Forsythe, Linda Evans, Joan Collins. It was Heather Locklear in it. A lot of soap stars,
Oh man.
like Michael Nader. And Pamela Sue Martin was Fallon number 1, and then Emma Sams, who was Fallon number 2. She took that right when she left General Hospital because she's Holly Scorpio. Diane Carroll as John Forsythe's sister, and that was a big thing too because when she popped up, they were like, "How can they be related?" Because it also showed, because Diane Carroll, famous African American actress, and she came on that show, and she was rich and fabulous, and she was related to the Carringtons, and
Yeah.
to the Carringtons, and it was like, oh, look at that, like into
Oh, that sounds
interracial
good, man. I never
relationships
watched
and
it.
stuff like that. And so there was a lot of firsts and a lot of like important things, but also a lot of silliness and craziness. You can watch all 9 seasons on Pluto TV. I would completely skip the remake that they made for the CW. Nobody remembers that one.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you
Forget
look
it.
up Dynasty, you're like, oh, I can watch it on Netflix. That's the remake. So you got to go to Pluto TV.
Yeah, you want the
It is
OG for
great.
sure.
This is. I mean, I've gone too much on. I'm all over the place. But if you want, if you love like the classic soap opera or the classic element tropes, this is the height of it. I mean, you had this, and then of course you had Dallas and Falcon's Crest and all this. But to me, Chef's Kiss was Dynasty.
Yeah.
Couldn't beat it.
Well, for my next one, we have the man who could assemble a weapon out of a pen and a lighter. It's MacGyver. Unbelievable what he could do. Nothing.
Yeah,
And
that ran on for a long time too.
it was very
OG.
entertaining show. I haven't actually watched it in a long time, but we loved it.
No, I mean, yeah, no, totally. Oh gosh,
Uh-huh.
yes. Now that I'm remembering it.
Yeah, I mean, he was famous for being able to get out of any situation using like a pen and his hat and a paper clip and like stuff.
Is this a popsicle stick and gum? I can make a bomb. Let me get out of here. I mean, it's amazing. I just realized I forgot when we used to watch. Used to give after Knight Rider when we would watch the repeats. I forgot about Knight Rider too. For this list, with the talking car. But yeah, MacGyver was amazing. Ran for a long time.
Yeah.
Like he could anything, and it would just explode. It's great.
Yeah.
And he was a spy of sorts, or
yeah. He was like an agent
of something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's totally fun, ridiculous.
I don't know if it holds up or not. I haven't watched it in a long time, but
there's a lot of mullets. It holds up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of mullets in the 80s, so get prepared for that, people. Just forewarning.
And actually, like, pretty funny is especially for the guy is MacGruber. Have you ever seen that?
Yes, it's pretty good. That's what MacGruber's making fun of. He's making fun of MacGyver. Totally, the OG MacGyver.
Because usually that kind of, when I first saw the trailer, I was like, oh, this is gonna be awful, but it's actually pretty funny.
Yeah, it totally is.
Hey, this is David from the Piecing It Together podcast, a podcast about movies and the movies that inspire them. For over 4 years each week, a guest and I take a look at a new movie through the lens of what other movies we think were either an influence or connect in some other way. It's a fun, unique way to discuss films that leads to a great list of other movies to check out that either explore the same themes and ideas or maybe utilize similar filmmaking techniques. Including special episodes in our side series that twist the format, we've done over 200 episodes, so there's bound to be one on a film you've been thinking about and want to dig deeper into. So check us out on all the major podcasting apps and at piecingpod.com.
Okay, what do you have next?
So we're at 6, right? So mine is, gonna get serious here, China Beach. Which was basically, I love the show. It was about nurses and doctors during the Vietnam War. It focused on them, and it's kind of heavy. They had some light moments too, but it's kind of heavy because they're dealing with death. They're dealing with a bunch of war trauma, and oh man, so many soap opera stars guest starred in it, and it starred Dana Delaney, Marg Hellenberg, and they won their Emmys for the show. Michael Boatman, Robert Picardo, Ricky Lake came on at the end, and
Was it
It's a
is
great show.
it
If you
is
love
soap
like these,
opera type show?
no, it's a medical drama. It's
Oh,
not a soap opera.
medical
It's
drama.
total like I would equate it to a medical drama, except they're in Vietnam. So like there's times where they have to go to bomb shelters and they can't because I would say that it's equivalent to MASH, but more serious. As MASH was all, but it was a comedy show, but they were in Korea in the
Huh.
doing the medical stuff. So I
Yeah.
would equate it to like MASH, but far more serious. Though MASH had its serious episodes as well, but this is more of a drama. It's totally great. It's not available on streaming, I think, it's probably because of the music rights. They used a lot of Motown music, but a couple of years ago, like Time Life put out the DVD set of the whole series, and it's well worth it because I own it. They have like 98% of the original music back. So you can watch it, with the original uncut with the original music, and there's like a whole bunch of bonus features. So if you love China Beach and you were considering it's a good investment to get the DVD because you can't watch it anywhere else. But this was a great show, and it hit a lot of, because it was on from 1988 and then it was on 1991. It was only on for 4 seasons, but it hit a lot of what people weren't talking about, like post-traumatic stress that these doctors and nurses were having. And there's one guy who his job is to send the dead home. He has to get them ready and put them in the coffins, and he has to ID them. And it also, like, there's episodes with the toll of this is his job in Vietnam. Like, what are we doing here? Like a lot of political stuff as well. Not too much like that, but a lot of because at that time we saw a lot what the soldiers were going through in the fighting, and this is a different aspect, part of the medical. But it's a great show, and a lot of people, guest appear on it on episodes that you would
Yeah.
like recognize today.
Mhm.
It was great.
I haven't seen that show. I don't know that show.
Yeah,
So
see,
that
the
sounds
thing is,
good.
it didn't run for that many seasons, but it was beloved when it was, and because it's not streaming anywhere, people forget about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, next is where I have Jen, the holograms. So I
yes.
agree with you. I love the show. I love the style. I love the music. It's cheesy and campy and cheerful, and it'll just put you in a good mood. I have it all on DVD, and it's
Awesome.
definitely a comfort watch for me.
I have to totally break down and get that DVD. I don't know why I don't have it, but I've got to get it.
That was the only good thing about the movie, is that they released the series on DVD when it
Yeah,
came
because
out.
I remember there was one series, but it was like edited, and I was like, no, I gotta wait. And I know that they have the complete out. I've gotta
Mhm.
put that on a list.
Yeah. I love the music. Oh,
Oh
so
gosh,
good.
it's so good.
Mhm. Yeah. All right. What do you have next?
I have my number 5 is Perfect Strangers,
Yeah,
which was one
that's
of
a good
the
one.
main shows for TJF Friday on ABC. Which
What a
was
weird show.
yeah,
That was
and it
such a
was
strange
yeah,
show.
it's so true. But Family Matters was a spin-off of this show
Mm-hmm.
because Harriet used to work in their office. She was the elevator
It's true.
lady. So Family Matters is an actual spinoff. And it stars Bronson Pinchot and what was his name? Oh, Mark Lynn Baker. Basically, if you look for a gift, The Dance of Joy, it comes from this TV show. It's so great. But basically, cousin Balky, who's played by Bronson Pinchot, he's from some whatever made up Greek island or close to Greek as can be. And he comes to the big city, the Big Apple, and he lives with his cousin Larry, and they are complete polar opposites. Larry's neurotic, Balky's more laid down and optimistic and naive, and it's just the shenanigans through the day, them dating, them working, typical. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day, the episodes, they just go through some comedic misunderstandings and mishaps. And I don't know, I love the show. It's very
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
The Dance of
That's
Joy
a good
will live on
show.
forever in my
Yeah.
mind. So rent free. It lives rent free in my
Yeah.
mind forever. Joyfully.
Well, my next one, it's tough because it's hard to watch now, because you just think, oh, he was assaulting women this whole time, and that this show, it's hard to watch the Cosby Show now,
Yeah.
but if you can try to isolate it, I mean, I loved it for so many years. I thought it's so funny. It's such a great ensemble. And he's so funny. Bill Cosby's so funny in it, especially anytime he is with Rudy or with Olivia later on. And they kept having to come up with these ridiculous reasons that either Denise or Sandra would have to move back into the house
Yes.
because they had to have the full house. And but I love his interactions with Theo.
Oh yeah.
And especially when Theo shaves his hair. There's so many iconic episodes. But I also love Felicia Rashad. She has some incredible episodes. She was basically like the perfect mother, that she's like this. She was so iconic for the 80s, being this attorney, but then also having 5 children and managing to balance everything and
Such
just,
an
like,
important show too for its time.
yeah,
Showing it was important to showing just a black family that was
stable and
stable
happy
and had careers. They were
Mhm.
successful, and you really didn't get that much representation like that.
Yeah.
Where
And I learned about like a ton of iconic black performers,
yes,
like
oh
Lena
yeah,
Horne and Harry Belafonte and people like that would come on to they
yeah.
would have these ridiculous. I remember the Lena Horne episode where they, like, Theo and his friends end up running into her and the what they would end up doing where they have these, like, the way they'd have to stretch to fit like these people into the show
Yes, it's
was sometimes
amazing.
a lot. But yeah, even like little episodes that I loved. It was such a well-written show, but like I
So
loved
well
the
written.
episode where Rudy gets her period.
Yeah.
And they have this tradition of having a woman's day on that day where Claire takes the girls out on a special day, but then it comes to Rudy's day and she doesn't want it, and she's like, and they're like, why don't you want to have your special woman's day? And she's like, because this was terrible, it was horrible, I
Yes.
hated it, and
So yeah,
like, I love that episode so much.
so much.
Vanessa had some absolutely wonderful episodes. I love when she's dating Robert and
Oh,
and
man.
and Cliff is like, so to Robert, you were in a vehicle with my teenage daughter, and he's just showing it with like 2 apples, and he's like, how close to you
Yeah.
were to my daughter? And he's like getting closer, and then
He's sweating.
and then Cliff puts the apple on top of the other apple, and he's like, was it like this? And he's like, no,
No.
no. Oh no.
What stands out in my mind is when when they're talking to Theo about with Monopoly money, and he's like, I made this much money. He
Yes.
goes, well, here's your rent, here's your this. I mean,
Yeah,
that
that's
sticks
a
out in my
great
mind. This
a
was a great family
because I think
show.
Theo wants to quit school. I think is what it
Yes.
is. He's
Yeah,
like, I
get
got
to
it all
work.
under control. I don't need to
Yeah.
try. I'm just gonna
He's doing with the Monopoly money show, and he's like, so you
'Cause he
broke, you
thinks-
got none.
he thinks that he's just gonna have a regular job, be a regular dude, and
Right,
and
and
so
yeah.
that means you don't need to try. And so yeah, that's a great. There's so many. It was such a well written show, so funny. So it's a shame
Yeah,
that
it's a shame.
it's a shame that he made those choices and he did
I
that.
mean,
But
nothing against people who still watch it because there's so many people involved with the show. It meant so much to a lot of people. It was a large cast. It was important. It's still funny. It holds up, but yeah, there is kind of a slight stain, not slight, but you know what I mean. But like, there's a stain against it now, and you do think, you really start getting into the weeds when you start watching. And I was like, oh, like he was what type of doctor he was on that show, and you're like,
yeah,
oh no,
that's
like
true.
I don't mean to say, you're right. It's like, oh, but if you can separate, and I have nothing against this, if you can
Mhm.
separate the art from how the person was in real life, then You're okay because
It's hard
we
on
have
that
to.
show, especially though, because he was
He was so the
moral
focal.
head. He was
Yeah,
the, it so
I know.
it's just tough. And I didn't know whether to include it or
Yeah, no,
not,
I think
but
including it is because it was important. I mean, it was,
yeah,
a big hit. It means a lot to many people even today. And
yeah,
sometimes, like I said, it's hard to separate the art from the person. Some people can do it because there's a lot of things that people love: music, books, stuff, movies, TV, and then you find out the person was a real trash bag.
yeah,
And it's kind of you're reevaluating that stuff, you're reconsidering it, but it did mean something,
yeah.
you know.
And if you watch the current one of the current Best Picture nominees, American Fiction, you can see Erica Alexander.
Yeah.
She's great in that movie, and she was Cousin Pam on the Cosby Show.
Yeah,
So it really did give a lot of wonderful actors their start
totally.
in the 80s. So anyway, it is what it is. What are you gonna do? All right, what do you have next?
So we're on 4, right? This is where I
Yes.
have the Golden Girls. I don't think I need to say anything more. The
Yeah.
Golden Girls is such a staple. Um, it's amazing how this show is like so old. Like it started in 1985. It ran for 7 seasons, and each generation, people just know the Golden Girls.
Yeah.
B. Arthur, Betty White, Rue McCallaghan, Estelle Getty. People just automatically know it's never been off a syndication. You can watch it on the Hallmark Channel.
Yeah.
A couple of other
Which,
channels you can watch it. It's on Hulu too.
I mean,
And
this show is a good show because they dropped it on Saturday night and that was not like a time when people watched television.
well,
Like
I
they were
mean,
watching sports and other stuff like that.
yeah. Well, I mean, because the era's changed. People used to not watch TV on Sunday, and then they did, and then they didn't, and the same thing for Saturday. But yeah,
Yeah. I mean, they just
like
did not have a lot of faith in the show, is what I'm saying.
yeah,
And
originally
and
no.
it was so well done. It's
Right,
so
because who
funny.
wants to watch a show about for middle age to later
Yeah.
age, like
Mhm.
60-year-old women? A lot of them playing older than what they were. But like, I mean, they're sexy,
Mhm.
they're confident. It's total bliss 80s too. And it's such a
Mhm.
simple show too. They're just 4 women talking about their troubles and their love lives and their children over a piece of cheesecake, but yet it's so funny and so entertaining
Yeah.
and so memorable to like each generation. I think this is a show that will continue to live on even after I'm gone. Like I think it's one of those. I don't think it's ever going to die. There were a lot of shows like that, like almost like I think the Brady Bunch has fallen off that curve. But for a while, everybody knew what the Brady Bunch was, right?
Yeah.
So it's those type of shows that just seem to be immortal. And
Mhm.
I think the Golden Girls is one of them.
Yeah. Well, my number 4 is, I think, a perfect show. Like it was so well crafted. It's so good. And I'm surprised it's not on the Hallmark Channel. It seems perfect for the Hallmark Channel. Is Who's the Boss?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I mean, this is rom-com gold. If
very true, very true.
you're you've got your more, it's kind of like the reverse of The Nanny, as
Yes,
far as, but you have the uh Tony Danza getting hired in that kind of nanny role, Judith
he's a,
Light
re-
as your
he's a
more
retired
sort of
baseball
stuck.
player, right?
What's
Yeah,
that?
he was a retired baseball player, right?
Yes.
Yes, right.
And Judith Light is the more like stuck up kind of, sort of the opposite of the nanny in that, but they have such
Career woman, yeah.
amazing chemistry and they're
Oh,
back and forth, and the whole rest of the cast was so great. And I love Katherine Hellman in this
oh.
as Mona. She is so funny, and it's just a great show. It's so well written, so well done. The ending is one of the all-time greats of
Yeah,
any sitcom ever. The finale
so
is
great.
so good.
And you know what? It's like he was an ex-football player who was a single dad because his wife died, and he became a housekeeper. You just
Hmm.
didn't see because he was like a macho man. You
Yeah.
just didn't see that type on TV.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's just incredible. Tony Danza was incredible on that show.
Hmm.
And I'll never forget the episode where Mona comes in and she's on a date. Was it good? Oh, no, it was not. But her shirt's on backwards because her pin is in the back, and that's how she gets caught. That's how she gets caught, and the kids are like,
He was so funny in
Grandma,
that
yeah, why's
show.
your pin on the back? Your shirt's backwards. Did you ever watch Soap, the show that she was on before Who's the Boss?
I haven't seen it, but I heard about it.
Oh yeah, it's a
Yeah.
parody of soap operas. It is hysterical as well.
Yeah.
It's worth a watch as well.
She was so funny. Oh my gosh.
Totally.
So what do you have at 3?
Well, the greatest TV show ever, greatest cop show ever, which would be Hunter.
Oh.
Ran for 7 seasons, It starred Fred Dreyer, Stephanie Kramer. I mean, it's Hunter and McCall, it's Dee Dee, it's Rick Hunter and Dee Dee McCall. And it's episodic. They're partners. It's Los Angeles. It's the 80s. Things blow up. They drive their cars off cliffs. It's just like it's action-packed, crazy stuff. It's the fights that sometimes you'd be like, they'd be undercover, and these guys would just like hit McCall right in the face. And today you're like, oh, he hit that lady in the face, but she would hit him right back, and they'd get into like a brawls. And listen, all stuff cops aren't supposed to do. Hunter did, but who cares? Because it's a TV show. It ain't real, It's crazy. It's crazy.
I never heard of it. I've never. Who's in this show?
Anybody
famous?
Well, I'm trying to think of they're famous to me, but like Fred Dreyer used to be a football player. What has he done? Stephanie Kramer was in a Hallmark movie.
Oh.
But at the top of my list, I can't remember anything else they did. They were big in the 80s and the 90s. They did a lot of I'd have to look it up. Now I'm going to go on a tangent to try to look this up. But yeah, it's a great show.
I've never heard of this show. That's very interesting.
You can watch it on Peacock. It's on Tubi. The complete series on DVD. Oh, it had television movies, and the television movies were so good it came back briefly in the 90s as a TV show. But if you have Pluto TV or Roku TV, they have an entire channel dedicated to Hunter, which is 24 hours of episodes of Hunter. Yeah, so and I know Fred Dreyer did a Lifetime movie too, where he played a bad guy. Now, I can't remember any of these names. Look, I'm trying to write it down in my phone here.
That's cool. I love when you learn about
it's great.
shows.
It's a great show. It was very important too when this came out, because you've had TJ Hooker and stuff like that, where they were fun shows and they had gritty episodes, but Hunter was like gritty. It was dealing with stuff that you didn't see all too much. And then shows came after that, cop shows came after that, replicating it, like dealing with pimps and prostitutions and drugs and like serious connections like to mobsters and stuff. So it was really ahead of its time in many ways when it first came out, and it had many people copying it afterwards.
Huh. So, cool. I love learning about shows. Isn't that amazing how a show can go on for 7 years and then be like practically forgotten?
It ran through almost in the entire 80s, basically.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just that's always interesting. Well, my next 2 might be a little obscure. I don't know. But it is, my next one is The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. This is Granada Television, British. It was on Masterpiece Theater at the time. Now it's just Masterpiece, but this is the iconic Sherlock Holmes for me. Jeremy Brett, and Edward Hardwicke became the main Watson. There were 2 Watsons, but especially in its main run, as he was clearly sick in the last like year or 2.
Oh yeah,
it's not quite as good, but it's just perfect, like as far as telling these stories, and he's just the Sherlock Holmes for me.
Totally good interpretations of the novels, some of the earlier episodes, and just everybody and their mother at the time, cream of the cream of the crop of British actors guest
Mhm.
starring.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, and he is just so good at capturing that manicness, that likability, that
Oh yeah.
just everything that you could want. This is who I would like if I'm reading the stories, this is who I think of
Right. Yeah.
is
That's a
as
wonderful
Sherlock
pick.
Holmes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's and like again, my parents did not watch television. But this is really the only show I can think of that my dad would make sure to videotape
Yeah.
when PBS was doing it, and I think they still probably have those videotapes of the different episodes.
Amazing. Yeah.
And
So great.
the man with the twisted lip is one of the ones I remember the most.
Yeah.
That one is brilliant, and I think it's called the Blue Carbuncle one with the that one's really scary. The what one is the Speckled Band? That's what it's called, the Speckled Band. That one's really good. Just I think they feel cinematic. They feel lived in. I think
Great costumes.
especially those early years really hold up well. And
Yeah.
this is it. This is how you do Sherlock Holmes.
Absolutely. Great costumes, the sets. Everything
Mhm.
was top notch. That's a great pick, Rachel. Great
And
pick.
there's actually a podcast that about
Ooh.
I forget what it's called. Um let me see if it's just the Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes podcast,
Yeah.
but it's pretty entertaining,
Awesome.
just
Yeah.
devoted to this show. And so if people haven't seen it, you really should watch
Totally.
watch
It's
it.
well worth it.
Mm-hmm.
On a
Yeah.
tangent here, Rachel, do you still call it Masterpiece Theater or just Masterpiece? Because I've never stopped calling it Masterpiece Theater.
Yeah. I still call it Masterpiece Theater.
Yeah,
I
I think it's
do.
because I
Like when I'm
grew up
talking
with it.
about All
Yeah.
Creatures Great and Small and stuff like that.
Yeah, I still
think
refer to it as well. Oh, Masterpiece Theater, and they're like,
Yeah.
"What?" And I was like, "Yeah, come on, guys, I'm old. This,
Yeah.
I'm an Anglophile. Like this show, this was everything to me growing up. Yes, I
Well,
was
and
so upset
people
over that rebrand, Rachel. I still remember. I was like, "No,
yeah.
blasphemy."
And people might think, oh, I don't need Sherlock Holmes when you've got Robert Downey Jr. and Benedict Cumberbatch. This
A
is much
thousand
better.
times
Much
better
better.
than
Much better.
Sherlock. A thousand
Yeah.
times.
Especially
I'm
that
sorry. I know.
the
We're gonna get
atrocity of
Sherlock.
that last season of
Well, we're
Sherlock.
gonna get Sherlock fans after us. Watch
Oh,
out, Rachel.
I don't
They
care. Bring it on.
are.
That
I know.
sucked.
I don't care. That show sucked from the beginning. There, I said it. Okay. I've had people come on hate me. Like, how dare you on Twitter on that time? I was like, go out and touch grass. That show sucked from the beginning.
I liked it. I liked the first season.
No, I could never.
But
Yeah. Well, whatevs.
terrible. Terrible. Oh, terrible.
Watch this version that Rachel said. It's so much better.
We'd like to take a second and thank our sponsor for this episode of the podcast. It's the Hallmarkies merch store.
Are you looking for that perfect gift for the postable, hardy, or Hallmarky in your life?
What about getting that t-shirt or hoodie that will help you stand out at your next holiday party?
Now is the time to check out the Hallmarkies merch store.
Full of festive designs by artists like Jessica Miller, Carrie from Hallmark Comics, and more.
You can even have more than just shirts, but totes, cell phone cases, notebooks, mugs, and more.
And it isn't just Hallmark. We have designs for Anna Green Gables, Man from Snowy River, The Nanny, and more.
Every purchase at the merch store goes to help support the podcast and allows us to make the great content you know and love.
There are frequent sales, so go to tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies or see the link in the description.
That's tpublic.com/stores/Hallmarkies.
All right, what do you have next?
I have another cop show. I have In the Heat of the Night.
Never seen
Man,
this.
I
I've seen
love
the
this
movie.
show. Yes, this is the show is based off the movie. It ran for 7 seasons. It's very complicated because 5 of those seasons gave on NBC, and then 2 of them gave on CBS, and then they continued it with a bunch of TV movies afterwards. But it starred Carol O'Connor, Howard E. Rollins, Anne Marie Johnson, Alan Autry, and then later on, Carl Weathers joined the show and Crystal Fox when Carol O'Connor they got married. Other characters. It went on for many years. I mean, it's like the movie. It has the tensions of the movie. It very much starts off that first season, but of course, as it goes on, there's a real friendship and budding working relationship. And it is because they're in Mississippi. So it's the tensions of the white citizens, the black citizens, how people are treated, and it's in the 80s and it very much has that Southern, sort of feel to it, but it's a great mystery show, great cop shows. I mean, they deal with a lot of stuff, murders, conspiracies, like, all the stuff you would think would happen in a cop show. And it's like, but it's more grounded because it's more rural, so it's not as fancy as like cop shows in LA or New York or anything like that. So it's wonderful. If you like the movie, I think you'll love the show. I do love the show. I still watch it today. There's still reruns of it. It gives on MeTV, and it's on Prime, I think, as well. So if you love cop shows, especially old cop shows of the 80s, this is definitely a much more grounded take on it.
Yeah, I've never seen that show. I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's
Like I
great.
said, I've seen the movie.
I still watch it. Like, I have wasted weekends just watching a Hunter, and in the heat of the night, like, oh, I gotta clean my house. Oh, wait, 24-hour channels dedicated to this. Like, I'm a sucker.
Yeah. Well, my next one is maybe obscure. I don't know how many people know about it. It's Fairy Tale Theater. And when I think the property is Shelley Duvall's Fairy Tale Theater, but I was thinking about it the other day that like what was our version of the Disney live action remakes that why we want to see these classic stories in live action, like what was our version? And I think that this legitimately was the 80s version, but it's so much better because this had its own style and was telling their own story as opposed to just recreating what was already done before. This was their own takes on these fairy tales, and they're you can feel the budget sometimes, but that adds to the charm, not take away from the charm. And the incredible cast that she was able to get for practically every single one of these, everybody from Robin Williams to Christopher Reeve to Bernadette Peters to, I mean, just everybody. And there's so many like iconic episodes. And I remember like frequently we would we'd go to the video store. It was Family Video was where we would go. The video store.
Remember those youngins?
Yes.
Video stores?
Video stores.
We would get VHS tapes there.
And we would get one of these fairy tale theaters on video, and we would watch them. And there's so many I love. I love Sleeping Beauty. I love I love the Rumpelstiltskin. I love the Pinocchio. We've got Pee Wee Herman in that one.
Did this show give on PBS?
I don't know if there.
I think I have a vague memory of it, but I'm not sure if I'm correctly remembering the right version, because I have a memory of the Shirley Temple one that they did in the 50s and 60s on PBS.
Oh,
and I know this isn't the same, but I wondered if this came on PBS because I kind of do remember something about this, but I'm not sure.
So it evidently it ran on Showtime from 1982 to 1987, and I don't know if it ran on PBS. Like I said, we always got it from the video store. But they had the Little Mermaid is wild because they just instead of they just have like wind machines to blow the hair like way high up. That's
great.
Their version awesome. That's their version of the ocean, which is just
I'm sorry, that's awesome, Rachel. That's
awesome. It's part of the charm of it. And they don't shy away from the darker aspects of these stories.
That's nice.
That's Disney would. But it's just loaded with practically every single one. You got Billy Crystal, you have like I said, almost every single one. James Earl Jones is the genie in the Aladdin one. And I was just looking to see if it's available on streaming anywhere. I don't think it is, but you can find it on YouTube.
Right. I might have to check this out. This sounds like a lot of fun.
I love them. And some of them are a little bit kinky now, like especially the Frog Prince. That's the one with
Well, now that you said
that's
Showtime,
that's
maybe
the one
that's why they're
with Robin Williams.
more.
And I
Well,
have it on DVD. You can get it on DVD.
okay.
And
That's why we
or
can't get rid of physical media because there are certain things that'll never stream.
you can find them on YouTube, but it is
Excuse me.
not officially on. Looks like there's some channels that have all the different episodes. Jack and the Beanstalk is a really fun one. That one has Gene Stapleton
Ooh.
in that one. It's really fun. So I just love them. I love the creativity. I love the inventiveness. I love the storytelling, and I have just great fond memories of watching them. So what's your number one?
My number one is the greatest private detective series to exist in the 80s, and that is Remington Steele, starring Pierce Brosnan, Stephanie Zimbalist, and Doris Roberts. And I'm going to get a lot for this because I also love the show. But for me, Remington Steele is far superior than Moonlighting. So many people just fainted right now and gasped and they're clenching their hearts right now. I'm so fired up. I got tongue twisted. Grab them pearls. But yeah, even though Moonlighting was ahead of its time, I just think Remington Steele is so much more fun, and it has so much fun with the premise. Basically, Stephanie Zimbalist plays Laura. She wants to start a private detective agency, but she's a woman. How dare she? So she makes up Remington Steele as a great private detective, and he's completely made up. And one day she's doing a case, and they're like, "Oh, Remington Steele is here," and she's like, "Excuse me?" And it's Pierce Brosnan as a con man, pretending to be Remington Steele, and she catches on. And I mean, if you watched Hallmark's The Dancing Detective with Will Kemp and Lacey Chabert, there's a lot of things that rips off of Remington Steele. In that, and so he references movies all the time. That's how he solves crime. Ooh, did you see this classic movie and all this? And eventually they partner up because he becomes the face of Remington Steele, and it's a whole will they or won't they through the entire run of the series until the very end when they do get together. And it's just there's mad capers. There's a whole episode where they throw pies in each other's face. It's a glorious 80s. The the one thing that I love about this is like they'll have to pull over, like we got to make a call, and they'll drive around the block and pull over and run to a payphone. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love that. Remember when we had to run to payphones and search for one? Those things are
Yeah.
gone. But even
It's
though
a good show. I remember really
yeah, it
enjoying
feels
it.
timeless though. Even though they have those things, it feels like it could belong in any era, even though it's a little goofy and it's a little serious. But I think the greatest thing to remember about Remington Steele is it robbed us of Pierce Brosnan being James Bond in the 1980s. Because that's why we had Timothy Dalton, because he got so originally ABC.
But I don't think he would have been James Bond if it wasn't for Remington Steele.
No, but so he got that, and NBC was going to cancel it after 4 seasons, and he got James Bond, and it was due to Remington Steele, the popularity, and Stephanie Zimbalist was going to be in RoboCop, and then people started to watch the show again, and NBC was like, "Oh no, we're going to pick it up for season 5," and they had to leave their respective projects because the first thing that came to commitment wise in contracts was the show. For them to cancel the show 5 episodes into season 5.
No.
So if you watch this show, if you watch this show in reruns, they never showed season 5. They would show season 4, and season 4 ended. Spoiler alert to like a show that's over 30 years old. It ended in 1987. They were going to deport Remington Steele because there was no paperwork, and he was an Irish man, Irish/British guy. And of course, Remington Steele doesn't really exist, and you find out he doesn't really know who he is. But so he's got no papers, so they get married on a boat, but they fake marry because it's a fake marriage, so he could stay in the country. And it ends like that. And season 5 basically is 5 episodes of them on their fake honeymoon going through shenanigans in Mexico.
Yeah.
But the most
That's
important part is,
wild.
people, is they are together in the end. So kudos to that. And a couple of years ago, they were actually thinking of bringing Remington Steele back. But this time it would be set like today, but it would be their daughter who was continuing the
I
Remington
don't
Steele
like that.
investigations. And I was
No.
super excited almost for that, but I knew it would be terrible, but it didn't go through. It didn't go through. But I was like, they are together, it's canon, but it's wild. But you can watch the show on I know it's on Prime. I think it's on Prime. And it's on DVD too, and it repeats on MeTV as well. But be warned that some of the episodes are slightly edited because of the music rights.
Yeah.
And even on the DVD, it's like that too. I bought the DVD sets. To me, it was worth it because this show is never going to come out in anything else like that. And like Moonlighting, it took how many years? You can watch Moonlighting on Hulu if you prefer that one. But they restored all the music rights for that. But we're never going to see that for Remington Steele. But this is a great show. It's so much fun. They had some great episodes. And like it's filmed. Some of these episodes look so cinematic, like when they're in Cancun running, jumping off of boats. It's always like stolen jewels or whatever. Or like, oh, we need to break into this, and they have to go to him because he's the expert thief. And what I loved about the show, and what I love about the 80s too, is they constantly reuse the same guest stars over and over again, playing different people with different looks. So don't take a drink every time you spot the same person in an episode. You could get roaring drunk at the end.
Yeah. Well, it's true. That is something that like binge watching is really changed.
Binge watching changed, because you notice.
Yeah,
absolutely.
you notice things. And a while back, I was considering doing a video on the Disney afternoons, which would be the 90s.
Yeah.
And so I started watching those old shows like the DuckTales and stuff like that. And it was, I was like, I can't do this video. I would just be too harsh because every single episode is exactly the same. And because we didn't watch them
right, we didn't watch them
back to back
right after the other.
We didn't care. We didn't
It's really
notice that
funny.
they literally did the same plot over and over and over and over again.
Well, that's the thing too is like at the time, Pierce Brosnan's wife was on the show twice as 2 different characters, and when you binge watch them, you're like, huh. Wait, wasn't this person so-and-so who died in a previous episode? But all 80 shows did that, even the 90 shows. But it is, when you stream them, you catch things like that. But this is a wonderful show. Like, people go watch it. It's so much fun. So and there's 2 beautiful people.
There's 2 like very iconic 80 shows that neither of us will have had on our list. Before I give my number 1, I should mention Cheers. Neither of us had that on our list. It was just, it was too old for me. Like, I wasn't gonna be watching a show about characters at a bar, when I was in the 80s. So just not my time. And then I would say Star Trek: The Next Generation. It kind of straddled the 80s and 90s, but that would be a very iconic show.
True. I mean, I love Star Trek Next Generation, but in my mind, I don't know why I think of it more as a 90s show, but it's true. I didn't add that on my list because that is weird. I didn't put that on my list. Now that you say
I don't think we mentioned it in the 90s either.
No, we did. And I love those shows, but I just,
Yeah. So my number 1, you've already said it. It's Golden Girls. This is a show that I have every season on DVD.
Oh,
I've seen every single episode. It still holds up. It's still incredibly funny. I mean, Betty White is just so funny. Like, whenever she goes on to one of her monologues about Saint Olaf, and you could see them holding back their laughter. They can barely contain themselves.
When you break Brie Arthur,
these are Broadway trained actresses, and they can barely control themselves. She is so good, but it was a show that wasn't afraid to tackle some really tough topics as well as being funny. And I think maybe because it was on Saturday night, it almost gave them a little bit of freedom because I kind of wonder if it's like, what do they have to lose? Like
Right.
they'll just put them there, and whatever the ratings they get is just kind of a bonus. I don't know. I wonder if that was the case, but like they had, Blanche, her brother's gay.
Right.
There's an episode where Rose has to get tested for HIV because of a
Oh my gosh,
transfusion
yes,
that
I
she
remember
got.
that. Yeah.
There's one where Sophia's friend wants to commit suicide.
Yes, because she's sick. Yeah.
So we're those episodes. And there's one where Blanche's daughter has a baby on
Out
her
of
own.
wedlock, right?
Yeah, well,
Blanche's daughter is fat and she has to deal with that too.
Well,
Like
not even just out of wedlock.
image.
She has a baby via
Oh, that's right.
like
Yes.
a
In vitro,
sperm
yeah.
bank.
Yeah. Oh yeah, at that point.
Yeah, and all of the, I mean, there are some bad plot lines, like when Miles becomes like it turns out as this double agent or whatever. Like,
well, it's only natural. You can't win them all. There's always thinkers.
There's some bad plot lines, but for the most part, it's a very funny show. They have such amazing chemistry,
and it ended perfectly too.
Yeah, nice ending with Dorothy getting married to Leslie Nielsen.
What a great catch.
Yeah. And so yeah, it's still iconic, it's still funny, it's still great.
Did you watch The Golden Palace though?
Comfort show.
Yeah.
I never saw that.
Well, it was only on for a season.
But Don Cheadle isn't it? Which is
one of
random.
his first, early like screen roles.
Yeah. And it's
I've seen like an episode.
I absolutely love the Mary Tyler Moore Show. That's probably if we ever do an episode of like, it will for sure be on there. If we ever do an episode of the most of my favorite television shows of all time, it will for sure make that list. But you think of the difference between Rose and the Sue Ann Nivens, it's just hilarious.
And her pink room. Remember that?
Yes. And Betty White is just, she is a legend.
I think people only really started to appreciate Betty White in her later years, like really what she put into that role, because all these ladies were fantastic.
Yeah. And, yeah. So it's my number one, but what a great time for television.
Totally.
Let's go over our list real quick. So I have Full House at number 10. I have You Can't Do That on Television at number 9. The Blackadder at 8. MacGyver at 7. Gem and the Holograms at 6. The Cosby Show at 5. Who's the Boss at 4. The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes at 3. Fairy Tale Theater at 2. And The Golden Girls at number 1.
Excellent list.
Yes, it's pretty fun.
Yeah. So before I get into mine, I almost forgot as an honorable mention, 21 Jump Street, where you had cops pretending to be teenagers and arresting kids. It's wonderful. Anyway, my number 10 is Gem. My number 9 was A Different World. My number 8 was Voltron. 7 was Dynasty. 6 was China Beach. 5 was Perfect Strangers. Number 4 was The Golden Girls. Number 3, Hunter. My number 2 was In the Heat of the Night, and my number 1 is Remington Steele.
Yeah. We only had 2 crossovers on both of our lists, which is kind of amazing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was so much TV, so much goodness, and so much cheese at the same time.
So let us know what you think, what you would have on your list, and what you think of our picks. Would love to hear in the comment section or on Twitter. And Terry, where can people find you?
I'm on Twitter at Flurry Heaven.
You can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. Also, make sure you're following the podcast, Hallmarkies Pod, Hallmarkies Podcast, all of our social media. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. Would really appreciate it. And if you are listening on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have the Patreon group, which is a lot of fun, and the merch store. And now if you want us to rank, to do a ranking, if you listen to us and think, oh, I'd really like to know what Rachel and Terry think about my picks, then sign up for the Patreon. You can for a particular tier, you can request a ranking from us. And so it's really fun. Please check that out. And also check out the merch store. And we'll talk to y'all later. Bye.
Bye.